Hello, everyone. This is the podcast Transcending to Your Best Life. And I am Mike Cerrito with a Talented Mind Clinic. And I am a cognitive rehabilitation therapist and a sports and performing arts psychology counselor. And I'm here with
Tina Shiver, and my company's Lighten Up Inc. And I'm a registered dietitian and certified in functional medicine.
So today's episode is going to be about why your mind and body gets out of balance. And we're going to look at it from a nutritional standpoint and a psychological standpoint. People know that when their life or their emotions feel too extreme, either too high or too low, but they often don't know why. They know certain tendencies they have in their life, but they don't quite know what is really going on below the surface that's causing this feeling of being out of balance. So today we're going to start off with looking at it from a nutritional standpoint of what nutritionally gets us out of balance that you need to be very aware of down the road.
So if anybody can relate to stressors, that would be, the first thing I would talk about is like what stressor is in their life. Did they have a family member die? Did they go through a divorce or a breakup, right? Or did they have an injury recently? And what happens a lot of times if a person is in balance, all of a sudden they feel a little bit out of control with the diet, with the food. One thing is they're not, if there's an injury, then they're not moving as much. So that can cause a person to be hungrier. It's like when you move, your hunger levels tend to go down, which is really interesting. And so you're sitting more, you're more depressed, you're not feeling as good about yourself. And what do? You go for the processed food. You go for the sugar, or you go for the salt, or you go for the fat.
Why do those things
It's what our
make
taste
us
buds
feel
love.
soothed?
Our taste buds love it. It's taste. They've done a lot of studies around that. I think it appeals to our taste buds, and I think it goes. That's a good question for you, Mike. It goes way back, right? If I remember when I was growing up, I loved sugar. I mean, I loved it. I hate to even, here I am a registered dietitian, and I'm like, I went for the chocolate. We would sell those world's finest candy bars,
Oh,
50
yes.
cents. I remember I bought all of them because
And they really were world famous.
they were the best.
Yeah.
But it just tasted good to me. I had a sugar taste receptor that was out of control for some reason. I didn't have any issues back then.
How is it now?
It's very balanced.
Oh,
I
it
worked
is?
very
Okay.
hard at it. No milk. Like I don't touch milk chocolate. I could care less about it. But now it's balanced. It's as I've aged, it's changed because I've changed my diet. So as I've balanced the protein, carb, and fat more, I just don't want it. If I eat it, it's because I want to have it versus I need it. How's that?
So in some of those situations in life that occur in how our certain aspects of our life or our health change, you mentioned movement.
Yes, yes. I tell you, it's hard for people to move. I see it more and more. Some people think you have to belong to a gym, and can be expensive, and you don't. I mean, basically what I ask people to do is just go outside and walk. Try to take in some steps, even if it's starting with 2,000 steps a day, and then move up. But movement for the body is important for mind, body, and spirit.
You know what I started doing is I got certified in ecotherapy, which is the use of nature therapeutically.
Wow.
And I started hiking with patients. And so I noticed that many of them would build their life around, like their daily life around our hikes. And because they were getting exercise and movement, but they were also far more expressive
Mhm.
in what we talked about while they were moving than, let's say, sitting on a couch in an office where they're stationary. Some people want to talk over the phone while they're walking their dog. So
Yeah.
I guess me and the dog get them active,
Right.
right?
That's right. Yeah. Anything, right? Whatever it takes. I mean, getting a bicycle and start riding on a bike, or walking, or getting a hula hoop and just doing the hula hoop to throughout the day, getting a jump rope.
So you really, what you're saying is it's really navigating to movement that you feel comfortable with versus what you're told you need to do, like go to a gym and pump iron.
Yes. Yes. I mean, you could even to increase muscle mass, you could take Campbell's soup, or some kind of soup cans or something at home, and increase your muscle mass that way. There's a lot of ways to do it. You could work in the garden. That up and down movement is good for movement and mind as well, because you're out in the dirt, and you're working with earth.
My wife's trying to convince me that weeding is good for my health,
She's right.
which I will not admit.
It is good. She's
I
right.
know.
I agree with her on that. That's
She's
great.
always right.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, so I think movement is really important, and I think you said something really also really important, and that is that if you're forced into something, it's not going to work. You're not going to hold on to it long term. If you find something that you love, be it yoga, be it marching in place, whatever it is, then you might continue it for a long time. So I think it's great. I was thinking about my grandmother who lived to be 90. She
Oh,
walked 3 miles a day until she was probably in her 80s. And the
really?
only reason why she stopped was because all of her friends had passed away.
Oh,
So she wanted, again, there's a social piece there,
right.
which is good for the person's balance as well.
Yes. What else
So
do you notice gets people out of balance?
so as far as food is concerned,
Yeah.
um yeah, I would say, like, with the people that come in to see me, I try to get them to keep food records, and I find that they like that it really helps keep them in balance if they know what they're eating, and or if they plan for the week. If they have a food list, and they're like, okay, this is what I have on my list, and this is what I'm going to go get.
So mindless
Yes.
nutrition
Yes.
can bite us in the end.
Yes, always. And most people think it's a pain in the what in order to do that, but it pretty much takes like 10 or 15 minutes. And think about it. If you go to the grocery store when you're hungry, what happens?
Oh, I get two baskets instead of one.
Right. And there's always, for me, something chocolate. And on
Yes.
the way home, I'm usually eating it.
And I'm always disappointed they don't have free samples.
Right. That's true.
Darn.
Darn. But yeah, so then again, yes. So not keeping a list, not planning ahead, that keeps your system out of balance as well. Maybe not preparing food ahead. That might also be important for some people. Um, Getting some ideas from other people as far as meals, because people get stuck and bored. So then what do? They go to fast food, or they go out to the restaurant. And I got to tell you, I love restaurants, right? But they're not the best balanced.
So, so much of what I hear nutritionally from people is time.
Hmm.
And now you have the ordering recipes and the delivery ones, and you have all different variations of how food can be delivered to you.
Hmm.
Um, what do you notice about time and how it draws people out of balanced nutrition?
It's number one for not only older individuals, but also younger. It's across the board. It's where I think our society is moving to. There's less cooking. I mean, people look at me sometimes like, are you kidding me? You think I'm going to? And I'm like, of course not. So you have to really condense it. You have to give them really easy, quick meals that they can make and that they won't, you know, that that they'll buy into. It takes 15 minutes instead of an hour. Less ingredients because they don't have time for that. Families, especially, with little ones running around, they just don't have the time. So it's like, how can they eat healthy and save time at the same time?
So there was a recipe you posted, something with lentil noodles,
Oh,
which
the
I
lentil
never
pasta today.
lentil pasta. I never
Yes.
heard of lentil pasta.
Yes.
How I would imagine that looked delicious, but how
Time consuming, not. You take the lentil pasta, you put it in boiling water. In 5 minutes, it's ready. And then you just add vegetables and lemon juice and olive oil.
oh my gosh.
So but here's one for you. What happens if a person has all that in their mind and they know it's not going to take long and they know they're going to feel better and they know it's all going to, that they get blocked and they just can't get beyond that block to make it happen? Why is that? What's going on?
Oh,
They're out of
they
balance, probably, right?
yes, and it may be that it doesn't there's some aspect of that block where there's not enough motivation. And this comes out of self-direction that when people are told that they need to do something because it's going to make them healthier, they tend to be less self-directed than people in who either identify with being, let's say, a foodie or a cook or a chef or eating healthy, or someone who just loves the feeling of and the whole aspect of cooking, of the movement of it, the smell of it, the taste of it, and then the creation of it. In other words, it's a personal experience that they love. They are so much more self-directed than the person who is told they have to. And that's why people who are told by their physicians to eat healthier or exercise, why do they start and stop? And when I looked into that, I was led right to the self-directed theory around, why we are self-motivated or not. And really, the more you identify your personality to being a certain way, either I'm um, I'm a healthy person. I like the feeling of being healthy, the identity of being healthy, or the identity of being a runner, or gym rat, or whatever it is. The more that it's identified in their personality and experienced with a level of delight, then they will stick with it versus the person that's just told they have to. But entire industries are filled with things we're told we have to, and those industries know that a very large percentage will never follow through, but their subscription will still be paid.
Of course, yes, yes. Interesting, very interesting. What about you, as far as
Well, I'll tell you what I notice in my
in practice?
practice
Yeah.
is that there's one consistent thing that, or narrative that crops up. And this is something I really focus on a lot because I find that it has been decades in the process to develop, and it really brings people to a point where they feel very out of balance in their life, and in many ways they don't even know what being in balance feels like.
Interesting.
And that aspect is the feeling that you're not good enough.
Right.
Now, think about it for a second. We navigate in our lives from infancy through different systems. We have our family system, our school system, our sports system. Then we create our own family system, our work system, And in most cases, each system has their own rules and values. And the people who run and manage those systems, are trying to condition our behavior. And so what we're told is there's a threshold, there's like a grade, a level we have to reach. And if you don't reach that level, if you don't operate at that level, then a level that someone else identified, not you, then you're not good enough. And you're often guilted or shamed because you're not good enough. And guilt and shame are very powerful tools to keep people in control. So if you want a kid to sit still in class, right, even though he is just physically just loves movement, well, you're going to guilt him. 9 times out of 10, you're going to make a comment in public to him about how he's not sitting still and he should feel guilty for that or ashamed of that.
Right.
Even just sitting still in a class, think about it, has a threshold you have to meet. I go to my kids' back to school nights, and which each class you go to is like 10 minutes. I'm exhausted because I had to sit still like for like 30, 40, 50 minutes, right? And I'm thinking my kid has to do this all day.
Wow.
And then listen intently and take notes. And so every aspect of our lives, from a federal level down to a personal level, there's thresholds we're told we have to meet, and if we don't, we're not good enough. We carry that feeling of not being good enough into the world. We have these narratives about us, about ourselves. Other people don't even have to tell us those narratives anymore. We just keep telling ourselves that. And when patients come to me and they're feeling extremely out of balance, I look at their narratives. And their narratives are typically, I'm not good enough, I'm not measuring up enough, I'm letting someone down, I should be better. And where did all that come from? It came from operating in systems where you're told there is an A, B, and C. There's first team, there's starters, there's subs, there's vice presidents, and there's white blue collar. We define levels so much in our culture that a study was done where they asked people, would you rather be the richest person in a middle class neighborhood or the the um, the least wealthy person or the poorest person in a very wealthy neighborhood? And people said the richest person in a middle class neighborhood.
Wow.
Because of hierarchy.
Because of, yeah.
We still use hierarchical language in our culture to describe people. And I just used it now. So the feeling of not good enough and the narratives that have been conditioned over years and years is really, if anyone remembers anything from these podcasts, is that they're going to see over time that not feeling not good enough has a pattern that ripples through our lives in so many different ways on everything we're trying to do. And what I have to do very often is help people rewrite their narratives.
Interesting.
What is true about you versus what have you been conditioned to believe? Remember, each one of those systems, they had people trying to control the system for good, often good intentions. But to get control in a thorough way, you have to have people feel out of control.
Oh, wow.
And vulnerable.
And vulnerable, yeah.
So that I notice is probably the biggest reason why people feel out of balance in their life, and they don't even know how it feels like to be in balance, to be self-accepting and self-forgiving.
Because over the years, it's almost like you have to peel the onion, as they say, and go deeper and deeper and deeper in order to, get to the imbalance, because there's many imbalances, right? Because they've been piled on top of each other.
Yeah, so when someone feels out of balance or stressed, where they feel not good enough, they may feel guilt, they may feel shame.
Mm-hmm.
They're not in their optimal zone. They're not in a balanced zone where they're feeling calm and flexible enough to handle the pressure that ebbs and flows in a normal day. What they are is either hyper aroused,
Okay.
which is where they're feeling anxious, angry, overwhelmed. They're in a fight or flight stage. This is where they're really pumped up. They may have had a panic attack. They can't sleep at night. And so they're very hyper aroused. Well, you lose all kinds of flexibility to soothe yourself when you're or show up in a healthy way to people around you when you're pumped up at that level. Or what they do is they become hypo aroused, which they're numb, frozen, withdrawn, they have low energy. And there, I hear both every day from clients. And usually it's because of a skill deficit. See, what people do is because they're feeling hyper aroused or hypo aroused, which they're told are not good places to be, which they're not. But people are emphasized, just get over it. Why can't you be like other people? And it's what they'll do is they'll label themselves. I'm not good enough because I feel this way. They personalize their out of balance emotion. They make it way too personal. And what I often tell them is that this comes down to you just lack a skill. Like you lack resources sometimes or a coping skill to manage this emotion in this situation. So once you teach them to notice and develop new coping skills when they're triggered in that way, they they stay in a more balanced state. They don't go into these more extreme states. But very often people make themselves feel as if they're not good enough. Somehow they're faulty humans. When being hyper aroused um, or hypo aroused is is really our alarm system. It's there to help us and give us warning.
So it's interesting. I'm going to take, so hyper and hypo reminds me of high cortisol, low cortisol.
Oh, really?
Definitely is, yes. So you can be hyper, and here's the thing, from a nutritional standpoint, if you stay out of balance and hyper, okay, cortisol is going to be high, 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 high for acute. If it goes into chronic, then eventually, from a nutritional standpoint, cortisol, it goes into hypo. The cortisol does,
Oh,
because you burn out. Your system, you don't produce the cortisol like you need it anymore, which in turn will make you metabolize fat less efficiently, increase weight, or it might decrease weight. So interesting connect, right?
yes. So it's a chain reaction,
Yes.
either direction.
Either direction, one way or the other. If you can get hyper under control, the hypercortisol, then you can relapse. Then it doesn't go back into that hypo. You don't burn out. I call hypo or low cortisol almost like flatlining. That you can hardly get out of bed. You're so fatigued and you have no energy. You've got no your nutrition has not been good, because when you're feeling like that, you're eating whatever usually. So which your body's out of balance.
Yes, yes. I guess anything we do whenever
It's right.
never ends up well. Right.
Right. That's right.
Right? So in the end, from a psychological imbalance, the length of time we spend in either hyperarousal or hypoarousal depends on our resources, our coping skills to stay in balance or not. So the main thing I want to make sure everyone understands is that how you're feeling does not define who you are. It's just trying to tell you something so you pay attention to it. It's a messenger.
Mhm.
And what it could be something biological, physical, or it could be something mental. It could be something um, life circumstance at the job, in a relationship. Very often, sometimes what I notice is seniors in high school start acting very differently, more tense at the start of their senior year. And when I talk to them, it's very interesting what they're worried about, and they're not quite aware of it, but they're worried about transitioning away from home.
Oh,
Now, they're not
interesting.
going to tell you this right away,
Right.
but they delay doing applications. They really slow walk the applications because all of a sudden they have to make a decision on where am I going to live for the next 4 or 5 years and not have mom and dad around or my brother or sister. And that's a major decision. So they lack the ability, the coping skills to know that they can transition, they can do that transition very successfully.
Mhm.
But that sneaks up on them. So a lot of this stuff will sneak up on us without knowing it. And some things are blatant, like someone saying, I don't want to be married anymore, right?
Right.
That's right there in front of you. But
Right.
um, it really is not personalizing it, but looking at it as an alarm bell that
Mhm.
something's out of balance, and there's a wealth of resources and people out there who will help you bring it in
Mhm.
balance.
Mhm.
Anything
Yeah,
else?
from the diet, from a nutrition standpoint, it's looking at those symptoms. Where's your energy level? Is it high and low? Are you really fatigued by the end of the day? Are you getting headaches? Are you feeling like your body's inflamed? Are you craving a lot of sugar or salt? Would be other.
Oh,
You take
really?
a look at what have you been doing different? Like if you look back at when you were in balance, this is how you felt. That's your baseline because you feel pretty good. And out of balance, it's like, oh, I feel like this. Like, what's driving it from a nutrition standpoint? What am I eating that's causing this imbalance for me?
That's great. So we hope that you pick up a few things that are extremely useful in your own life. And we'll be back next time to talk about how to bring yourself back in balance when you feel out of balance. This is Mike Cerrito.
Tina Shiver.
See you next time on Transcending to Your Best Life.